And thanks for joining us. Here's what I have at the top of the stack. The Supreme Court has ruled on Obamacare. The big surprise was the mandate is okay as a tax, but not under the Commerce Clause. Is this judicial activism? Joining me now, Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Are they writing the law as opposed to interpreting it?
Well, the Chief Justice told the Senate Judiciary Committee when he was nominated for this job that he would be an umpire, not a pitcher and not a batter. And we know from his prior decisions that he strains to find ways to fulfill the legislative mandate. That is, if there's some narrow way that a statute can be upheld, even if there are constitutional objections to it, he'll look for and find the way. And that's basically what he did. I mean, Congress said you must buy health care. Chief Justice says Congress can't do that under the Commerce Clause. It can tell you what you cannot put in interstate commerce, like lottery tickets, but it cannot tell you that you must engage in interstate commerce. But under the spending and taxing power of the Constitution, there's no limitation. The only limitation is political, what the people will allow the Congress to do.
Sure.
So Congress can raise taxes however much it wants and spend the tax dollars however it sees fit.
All right, but listen to this. This is the president talking earlier about the fact that this is not a tax.
Your critics say it is a tax increase.
My critics say everything's a tax increase. My critics say that I'm taking over every sector of the economy. You know that. Look, we can have a legitimate debate about whether or not we're going to have an individual mandate or not. But
you reject that it's a tax increase.
I absolutely reject that notion.
You know, his lawyers, the federal government's lawyers, when they argued before the Supreme Court, they argued that it was a tax. And the reason they argued it was a tax, we're talking about the money that an individual must pay to the IRS if the individual does not acquire a minimally acceptable health care policy. The reason they argued it was a tax is because they could not tolerate the alternative, which is it's a penalty. If it's a penalty, then you have the opportunity to challenge it. So if you have 10 million people being penalized because they didn't buy health insurance to the government's satisfaction, you'd have to hold 10 million trials. They couldn't do that. So they said it's not a tax when they were getting it through. They said it is a tax before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, knowing that the taxing power is limited only by the political response, you can raise taxes as much as you want and spend them however you please, except when the people vote you out of office. That's the hook on which the court hung its hat.
And so that's the way they were able to drive through the legal morass to get to the point where they got the thing through.
I'm glad you did this, because if Justice Scalia had written for the majority and they did this, oh, the uproar that we would be hearing about judicial activism. Why is it judicial activism to enforce the Constitution when it stops the Congress, but it's not judicial activism when you drive a camel through the eye of a needle in order to help the Congress?
All right. We've talked before about the Commerce Clause, and you tell this great story about a case where there were some guys on a building here in New York City washing the windows, and because they could see New Jersey,
their wages could be regulated by the federal government on the theory that that was interstate commerce, the act of looking across the Hudson River from New York to New Jersey.
It seems so bizarre.
It's a Second Circuit opinion. It's not the Supreme Court. It is truly bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre. So did this at least help out in saying, hey, the Commerce Clause isn't as wide as it used to be?
Yes, it did. It says this: Congress can stop items from moving into interstate commerce, whether it's marijuana or lottery tickets, but it cannot compel people to move items in interstate commerce. That's a bright line that the court drew. In fact, Justice Ginsburg, perhaps the most liberal member of the court, dissented vigorously, vehemently, intellectually and professionally, but with vigor that rarely comes from her over that particular holding, because she would grant the Congress sort of Bloomberg-like power to make everybody's life the way the Congress thinks their life should be, and the Chief Justice said no.
Explain the part about the states and Medicaid.
Okay, 26 states sued the federal government because they objected to the fact that the statute ordered the states to raise their own taxes and take those tax dollars and spend them on an expansion of Medicaid. Basic, bare bones health care for the poor.
Right.
The states are ordered under the statute to make this available to anybody who can't get health care anywhere else. There's no monetary limit on it. You don't have to be poor. You just can't get health care anywhere else. And then the Congress said, if you don't do this, we'll do it for you, and we will deduct the cost of it from other monies we owe you. The Supreme Court took away that penalty power. So the courts can, the states can basically say, as my great home state Governor Chris Christie said to the federal government, this is the way he did it, go take a hike. We're not doing it in New Jersey. The feds can come in and construct this insurance exchange, and they cannot charge the state of New Jersey a nickel for it. That's the only victory in here for the challenges. Basically, the 26 states, of which New Jersey was not one, that challenged this, they prevailed because the sting, the ability to punish the states that don't comply, was removed.
Well, so then it's going to be interesting to see what the states do, whether or not...
Well, right, because, and from the president's point of view, what does he do now? He has 17 million uninsured, and in some cases uninsurable people who if they live in states where the legislature or the governor are not going to go along with this, will have no place to go or will have to be paid for by the feds.
Yep. Which means you and me.
Which means all of us.
That's right. Judge Napolitano, thank you always.
Even when we discuss unhappy things,
yes,
it's always happy.